Hello there, welcome to my very first painting video, and for this video we're going to paint up a Mantic zombie, chosen one that's bursting out of the ground. So we're going to start with a little bit of Citadel Mephiston red, nice bright red tones, and paint that into all of the little recessed guts areas, all of the exposed guts and gore. Paint these up nice bright bloody red. It's nice to have a little bit of control, take your time. Don't have to be too neat at this stage though, because we will be going back over the skin tone and covering over any mistakes that you make at this point. So we're going to turn now to the skin tones. We're going to use the Army Painter Tanned Flesh for the skin tones to start with. So we're going to base this nice watered down thin layer and use nice straight line brush strokes. Just going to cover the whole model. Take about 2 or 3 coats to get this to where we need it to be. And once you've covered the whole model, just give it a little bit of time, let it dry down before we move on. So you're going to use Vallejo Bone White for the side of his face. So again, nice and gentle, take your time, straight lines so that you've got plenty of control. I'm going to cover the one half of his skull face in this bone white. There's also a little spot on his lower back where there's a few bones as well. Just going to cover his bottom half in Monster Brown from the Army Painter. Again, you can see his nice thin watered down coats. So the paint actually transfers onto the miniature much easier. So with that Monster Brown, we're also going to just keep nice straight lines to just do a few strands of hair. It does have hair. Just a few strands either side of his head. A nice bald patch coming right up on top. And once everything's dry and you've got your base tones done, you just want to cover him all in Citadel's Agrax Earth shade. This shade is a fantastic colour to make things very dark and muddy and dirty. You just want to try to avoid the pooling. So as you can see under his arm and just around his neck, there's a little bit too much pooling. So you just want to try to manipulate that and move that around. Once you've adjusted the pooling and allowed for the Agrax to dry, you should have a very muddy, dirty looking zombie, which for some people, if you're doing 40 or 60 zombies, this could be enough of a stage to leave yourself at. But we're just going to progress and move on. We're going to go back down to the tanned flesh from the Army Painter, and we're just going to pick the skin tones back up and re-highlight. So we're going to paint on the skin tones, but try to avoid the deeper areas where the shade is settled, so that we can leave that tone and that contrast between the light and dark should pop a little bit better then. Again, nice straight lines, try to get yourself a good anchor point. Take your time at this stage because you don't want to go over the recessed areas and end up spoiling what you've done. So as you see, we're just going around on the highlighted areas, avoiding the deeper, darker points. You got a little bit of freedom with this to build a little bit of character. Once you go around the whole model, your contrast should stand out quite nicely. But don't forget as well to pick out some of the highlighted points across the eyebrows, cheekbones, nose, the bottom part of the chin and around the mouth area. Yep, this part can be tricky, so again, take your time. Keep those deeper, darker areas. Like so. We are going to use another colour afterwards to highlight further. So this is just reapplying that base coat on top of where we were. Same thing as what we've just done with the skin, so back to the Mephiston Red, the Citadel Mephiston Red, just to highlight those red parts so that we get that colour to stand out a little bit more on top of that shade. So we're into the real detailed niggly bits now. So once again, we're sticking with the army painter. I use the barbarian flesh, which is the highlight point, and as you can see, I'm just trying to pick out the real highlighted point. So like I said earlier, the eyebrows, the nose, the chin, the top of the head. And again, we're just going over very, very nice thin down coat barbarian flesh. Just going to go around the body and pick out the areas that we want to really, really stand out and stick out. So on his shoulder as an example, whereas we painted that, shaded it, then brought the main colour back by using the barbarian flesh, if we use some nice lines but just avoid the middle point, it would give you a nice darker recessed line through it, creating that element of depth. Doing the same process on the skeleton bone side of his skull now, so going back to the Vallejo bone white that we used to originally paint. We're just going to use that to highlight him back up, so again around the eyebrow, around the cheekbone, around the eye socket. Same again, just around the brown. What I've done for the brown on this one though is I've used a 50-50 split, so 50% Vallejo bone white with 50% monster brown. And we've done that on purpose so that we get a little bit of a lighter tone, and then we're just picking up on some of the creases and some of the highlighted points. Again, so that should show through a little bit more of the contrast. You should get that nice shine. So I'll place in Styland mud. I'm just going to dab that all over the base and try to get the base really muddy and horrible. Good point with this is you can add, with the dabbing technique, you can dab this across some of the paint that you've already done. So across the brown and bits on the bottom, it should tie into the model, so you should get a little bit more of a muddy feel across the bottom of the model joining into the base. So Citadel's Evil Sun Scarlet is a really, really nice highlighted tone to that Mephiston Red. And again, we're just going to use this on the very tip points of the gory bits. Again, just making them pop, making them stand out nice and bright. Now this technical paint, Typhus Corrosion, has an amazing ability to tone down and go really dark and horrible. So I normally use a very old brush for this with separated bristles, so that I can dab that mud into a more controlled environment. And once that dries down, it goes really, really dark, really horrible, really muddy, which again builds out contrast from the skin tones to the dark, muddy areas. As you see, just dab in, so you've got plenty of control. Don't drag your paintbrush across the model like this, because you'll end up losing a lot of what you've worked hard on with your paint, with your skin tones. So there we go, we just dab in little bits all across the arm. Dab. maybe a bit too far. If it's gone a bit too far, just rub it off. So another technical paint, Blood for the Blood God. This Blood for the Blood God is brilliant for bringing out blood and making your blood effects really sort of wet and horrible. Most people would just jump on and cover all of the area with blood. What I would suggest with this though is, instead of going too extreme, use this in stages. So instead of going and covering the whole model and the whole guts area in blood, just go around the edges. So you've highlighted your guts and your gore, and what you're doing is you're just going around those patches of skin to almost give it the effect that there's a little bit of a tear there, so it's a little bit more fresh. You don't want it to cover the whole model, because once you put that over all of the red, then you're going to lose out on the paint job and the highlighting that you've already done, and you don't want to do that. You want to try and keep that highlight. And you can add little streaks and bits like drips and droppers and bits like that. This will add a little bit more character to the miniature rather than just a blob of blood. You want to streak it down so that it looks like there's a little bit of action going on, a little bit of character through what you're painting. As you see, I'm just going around the edge, not painting on that big red point in the center. That point I'm trying to keep as that highlighted gory red. What you find with the technical paints quite often is less is more. If you put too much on, you can ruin what you've made. Whereas if you take your time and just put a little bit around what you're doing, it can really have a big effect on your miniature. The examples being here, the typhus corrosion on his hand. You can see how dark that's gone in comparison to the highlighted skin tones across his chest. So that's giving you a little bit of a nice tone, a nice contrast. On the tabletop, this guy is going to stand out. He's got a bright white skull, he's got red guts, he's got dark muddy hand reaching over. He's going to be a real sort of nice addition to the unit. Just placing a little bit of that Blood for the Blood God. That's probably too much of a splodge, too big. So you're just going to drag it down a little. Again, adding a little bit of character, adding a little bit of a drip so that it looks like the drip is just going down his face. And then it is, you've got a very muddy, spooky, horrible zombie. There is only one other stage that you may have noticed, which is I've just added a little bit of a shade, a little bit of Games Workshop Druky Violet, which is a little purple shade just into the eye socket. There are many mistakes, but hopefully that should help you to paint some skin tones on your zombies. Thank you all so much for tuning in to my first ever painting video. Sorry about the focus being a little bit all over the place, but hopefully next time I can get that fixed and learn how to do that a bit better. But thank you so much for your time, and I hope that was helpful for you.